Good morning, boys and girls. Welcome back to my classroom. I am Mrs. Armstrong, and I teach elementary art at Sequoyah School in Claremore, Oklahoma. This is our last week of distant learning this week. So I am ending our art week with a folding surprise. I'm going to read the book, Clark the Shark, and then we're going to be drawing Clark the Shark, and there's a folding surprise on the inside. So you will need paper, pencil, markers, or crayons. So let's get started with our book, Clark the Shark, written by Bruce Hale, illustrated by Guy Francis. There he is, at school where we wish we were. Here's his school bus. It's a submarine. See it okay? All right. In all the wide blue seas, in all the wide blue world, the top school for fish was Theodore Roosterfish Elementary. And all the fish at Theodore Roosterfish, the biggest and the strongest, was Clark the Shark. Here he is trying to get out of his school bus. Clark loved school, and he loved his teacher, Mrs. Inkydink. He loved to play upsy-downsy and spin-a-majig with his friends. Clark loved his life. Here he is playing spin-a-majig, and this is his teacher, Mrs. Inkydink. School is awesome, shouted Clark the Shark. Less shouting, more reading, said Mrs. Inkydink. Lunch is sweet, yelled Clark the Shark. Munch your own lunch, said his best friend, Joey Mackerel. Recess rocks, bellowed Clark the Shark. You're playing rough, Clark, cried the other kids. Yes, Clark loved his life with all his sharky heart, but he loved everything way too much. He was too loud. He was too wild. He was just too much shark for the other fish to handle. After a while, no one would play with Clark. No one ate lunch with him. No one sat with him at circle time. Even his best friend, Joey Mackerel, said, "Cool your jets, Clark. You're making me crazy." So here he is, all alone, because he played too hard, too loud. One day, Clark asked Mrs. Inkydink, "What's wrong with everyone?" Mrs. Inkydink patted his fin. "Clark, sometimes you play too hard. You munch too hard. And gosh, you even help too hard. But life is so exciting," said Clark. "There's a time and a place for everything," said Mrs. Inkydink. "And sometimes the rule is stay cool." At recess, Clark tried to stay cool, but he pushed the swing with too much zing. "Sorry," said Clark, "I forgot." "Yikes," cried Joey Mackerel. At lunch, Clark tried to stay cool, but everything smelled so good that he munched a bunch of lunches. "Sorry, Clark, I forgot." "We're starving," said his friends. In class, Clark tried to stay cool, but a good book got him all shook up. "Now, Clark," said Mrs. Inkydink, "this isn't the time or the place. Tell me what's the rule." "Stay cool," said Clark. "Hey, that rhymes," he cried. Then Clark got a big idea in his sharky head. Maybe if I make a rhyme, I'll remember every time. He thought. The next day, he put his plan to work. In class, when lessons got exciting, Clark wanted to bounce up out of his seat. Instead, he told himself, when teacher's talking, don't go walking. And what do you know? It worked. Attaboy, Clark. Clark, said Mrs. Inky Dink. Clark smiled. Lessons are fun. At lunch, everything smelled so yummy. When Clark wanted to eat and never stop, he told himself, only munch your own lunch. And it worked again. Way to go, Clark, said his friends. Clark grinned. Lunch is fun. At playtime, Clark told himself, easy does it, that's the way. Then my friends will let me play. And playtime was fun. Once more, Clark loved his life. But then a shadow fell across the playground, a ginormous shadow with tentacles galore. It's a new kid, and he looks scary, cried Joey Mackerel. Swim for your lives. The squid squashed the slide, and it snapped off the swings. Oops, my bad, said the new kid. Well, said Clark, he just wants to play. Let's find a way. And he swam at the new kid with all his might. Clark played harder than he ever had before. Upsy, downsy, and spin-em-a-jig. Why, he even made a new game, Tail Wampalompus. Wow, that was fun, said the new kid breathlessly, and he settled down. If you want to come to school, you've got to stay cool, said Clark. That's right, Clark, said Mrs. Inky Dink. And thanks for taking care of our new classmate, Sid the Squid. Hooray for Clark the Shark, everyone cheered. That night, Clark's mother asked, what did you learn at school, dear? There's a time and a place for everything, Clark said. Sometimes you stay cool. But sometimes a shark's gotta do what a shark's gotta do. The end. All right. So there's Clark the shark. Now we're going to draw a shark, and we're going to turn him into Clark. So I'm going to blacken the background. And we're going to pull this up so we're close. Now, the first thing we're going to need to do, though, is to get our paper set up, because this one is a folding surprise. So turn your paper long ways, and you're going to fold it in half. Crease it down the middle. So we folded it from the top to the bottom. And now you're going to pick up this first flap and you're going to fold it to the top. So that it looks like this. So we folded it down, take the first flap, fold it up, turn it over, and you're going to take this flap now and fold it up. So it kind of looks like this. Now the fold that we just folded up, just fold it back down for now. Turn it to the front and it looks like this. So if you lift up this top part, it will open up like that. Now I'm drawing mine on a big piece of paper, and so that you can see the folds, I have created some dotted lines. So you don't have to put dotted lines on yours. So basically, this is my big piece of paper that I folded down, folded this flap up, flipped it over, folded this flap up, crease it, let it come down, fold it back to the front. So this bottom piece will stay at the bottom, and the flap that opens up goes at the top. So get this back started. Okay, get you a pencil, eraser. I will be drawing with a marker so that you can see it easier. Now, our folding surprise is going to end up looking like this. So here's Clark saying, "Stay cool." But before he learned stay cool, he was loud and he played hard. So inside, he's yelling, "Lunchtime is sweet. School is awesome. Recess rocks." Mrs. Inky Dink says, "Stay cool." And then that's when it goes back down to stay cool. And then whatever time you have left over, you can work on your background. So this is kind of what it looks like when he's folded up. So basically, you're going to do half of a circle at the top to the fold, and then a half a circle at the bottom on the bottom fold. So I'm going to kind of start up here at the top. You need to leave some room at the top for his fin and his hat. So I'm going to start about right here. Do a circle coming down, and then let's go to the other side. Circle going down. Doesn't have to be a perfect circle, so get it as close as you can. And make these meet right there. All right, so we have our circle for our shark. Let's put on two big eyes. And you can make him looking at whatever you want him to be looking at. I'm going to be writing "stay cool" over here, so I'm going to have him looking that direction. I'm going to put his little eyes over like that. And then you can color that in black, or you can wait until a little bit later. So I'm going to give him two little nose holes right here in the front. Is that pretty close? Is that close enough? All right, now his shark fin. We'll also be putting a hat up here, but since you're drawing with pencil, you'll be able to erase a little bit. So I'm just going to put on a shark fin, and whenever I draw my hat, some of this will be in it, but that's okay. So if you want to go ahead and put his fin on there, if we want to go ahead and draw his hat. Now, if you don't want to turn yours into Clark, you can just leave it as a shark. So I'll just draw him right now as a shark, and then we'll come back in and dress him up. So his bottom fins will be down here. So I'm just going to barely draw right in there because that's where his sleeve's going to be. And then here's the end of his fin. And then kind of down this way. Just do some little dotted lines in there because I'm going to put a shirt on him. Well, I'm going to go ahead and put his shirt on. That way I know where his little t-shirt's going to go. I'm going to draw across right there. Turn this into a sleeve. I think he looks cute as Clark the shark. Put some little gills on him. Now I'm going to open him up. We can do the inside, and then we'll come back and decorate him. So now you get to draw his huge mouth when he's loud. I'll open this up. I think that'll stay down. All right. So this line has to go all the way down and meet up with this line. Just kind of meet here in the middle, like that. And then on this side, straight down. And I'm going to start on this one and go up. Now the key, everything on the inside, you want to be hidden so that when he closes up, the only part you see is the top part and the bottom part. So it's very important now that everything we draw stays inside the folds. Now I have mine dotted. You don't have to do that. You should be able to see your folds. So now let's draw his mouth. So I'm just going to kind of draw another line going beside that line, but I'm staying below this fold and staying above that fold. So I'm going to do that on both sides because he has a really wide mouth. And then I'm just going to kind of circle that around. And of course he has huge shark teeth. So put on some shark teeth. And shark teeth on the bottom. Probably should have got one more in there. All right, now his tongue. His tongue almost looks like a heart shape. Just as long as you're in the center part, it's fine. So I'm just going to start in the middle, kind of circle it around. There's his tongue. And then the back of his throat. We're going to put the little hangy down thing that's in the back of your throat. So I'm just going to start on the top of his tongue. Circle around. Put the little punching bag looking shape in there and circle back around. So when you color, this will all be black because it's going down his throat. And then you can do like 2 shades of red. So I think that's basically our shark. I'm going to add his hat on. Now on his hat, I'm going to get kind of closer so that you can see this part. I'm going to put the bill of the hat on first. So I'm just going to curve it up and around. And then this is going to be kind of the bill of his hat. And then the cap of his hat, I'm just going to circle in right there. And then whenever we color it, if you've got pencil, you'll be able to erase those lines right there. And on his hat, he has a little yellow oval. So I'm going to kind of draw that in. And then that will be yellow. And then I'm going to put his stripes on his shirt. Let me hold this up here a little bit so that I can get that a little closer. I'm just going to come across this way for his striped shirt. However many stripes you want to put on there. Stripes on his sleeves. And you can color this any color you want. If you look at the book, he's wearing red and white. But I think that's it. Unless you want to write the words, I can go ahead and do that. And then we can kind of color. So I'm going to write Clark the Shark up here. And I'm going to stay above the fold so that you can see that when it's folded up. And over here, I want to write stay cool. Exclamation point, and then I'll put up my little speech bubble around it. And then on the inside, if you want to write some of the other things that he's yelling out since his mouth is so big, once in the book he screams out, "Lunchtime is sweet." Remember, this is in between the big folds in the middle. Lunch time is, and on the word sweet, put in some extra E's. Some quotation marks around it, and then add your speech bubble wherever you're wanting that to start. Mine's going to go off the page a little bit like that. School is awesome. Another speech bubble. And then recess, rocks. All right, there he is. Now it's just coloring time. You might mix it up. When I colored on mine, I used a little bit of crayon and a little bit of marker. So I may do some marker first, color in some of his hat. Maybe when I color this in, you won't be able to see my black line as much through it. As I'm coloring, I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in and watching my lessons, and those of you that have been participating and sending them to me through Facebook or email. I want to thank you guys for participating. I really appreciate it. This is all new to us, so we are enjoying it. I'm enjoying seeing your artwork. Even though this is my last day, if you draw something at home and you want to show it to me, I will leave that group page up on Facebook. I'd love to see what you're drawing. So I'm just kind of coloring every other one red, basically. Not a lot of color on this. We've got some red going on. And then, of course, he's gray. So you can get that done. And then you can take some markers and color in some water around him if you want to. It's not my best coloring. Kind of hard coloring sideways. And then I'm going to do some shout outs for Frida Kahlo's parrots from last week. I have 3 winners on that I have sent ribbons out to. So my marker seems to already be running out of some ink. It's another reason why I like to use crayons, even though markers are darker. And then you might want to use crayon. I colored in a lot darker on his tongue and then lighter back here in the background, black down his throat. Might want to darken in his eyes. Get that colored in. Okay. He's coming along. I'd love to see your sharks. So you can post them to my Facebook. See what they look like. And then I'm going to move this over. I'm going to do my shout out For my Frida Kahlo parrot winners from last week, we have Emerson from 2nd grade. These are all Sequoia students. Liam from 5th grade. And Allie, is this in the way? And Allie from 1st grade. And then if you're wanting my Facebook page so that you can post some pictures, it's Mrs. Armstrong's art class, Sequoia Elementary, Claremore, Oklahoma. And then I have a couple shark jokes. Here's one. What do you get when you cross a shark with a snowman? Let's see if this will work. Frostbite. And why do sharks prefer living in salt water? Because pepper makes them sneeze. All right. I want to thank you guys again. Let me back this up one so my Facebook page is still up there. And I'd love to see your finished sharks. I'll do a 1st, 2nd, 3rd place again. So get them all colored, get some background in. And there he is. I think the light's shining on him. Turn this back off now. I want to thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in August.
Good morning. Mrs. Woodson here at Sequoia Elementary in Claremore, Oklahoma, where we're going to bring another little library share into your living room this morning. Last week, our library share was about a book that we don't want to lick. I don't know if you remember that or not. We talked about microbes that can get on our hands, that can cause viruses and infections in our body. And we talked about some things that we can do to keep our hands clean, like hand sanitizer and soap. That's a responsibility that we have to ourselves. We have, to keep ourselves well, to keep us feeling healthy. Today, we're going to talk about something that we can do to keep the earth healthy. A couple of days ago, actually a couple of weeks ago, Earth Day book. Thank you. A couple of weeks ago was Earth Day. April 22nd, actually, was Earth Day. And I've grabbed this little nonfiction book, and I'm just going to read one little page here to you. It's all about Earth Day. It says, the first Earth Day was held in 1970 to draw attention to the need to care about our planet. Littering and pollution were becoming a problem in the United States and other places around the world. People were being wasteful with materials. Very few people recycled. Earth Day changed all of that. As of 1990, the holiday of Earth Day is held on April 22nd each year all over the world. So in honor of Earth Day, there's some more information, good information in this book about the holiday of Earth Day and things we can do. And as I read through this, one of the things that we can do is recycle our trash. And I was thinking about that last week at my very own house and our trash that we have. And I send out tons of trash to the corner every week. And I started thinking about what can I do to change how much trash goes out to the corner. And I started investigating a little bit, and I got interested into composting. I have a little poem I'm going to read to you today from this book. It's called Compost Stew, an A to Z recipe for the earth. It's by Mary McKenna Seidels, and it's illustrated by her friend, Ashley Wolf. I'm going to start this, I think, by pushing this button down here that says play. And I'll read it to you because I think you're going to be surprised at the ingredients that go into compost stew. Thank you. Compost Stew, an A to Z recipe for the earth. It's by Mary Seidels and her friend Ashley Wolf. Environmental chefs, here's a recipe for you to fix from scratch to mix a batch of compost stew. Look at her spoon. It's a pitchfork. Ingredients: apple cores, bananas bruised, coffee grounds with filters used. She's got her cores. Dirt clods crumbled, eggshells crushed, fruit pulp left behind, all mushed. Grass clippings, hair snippings, and an insect or two. Just add it to the pot and let it all rot into compost stew. Ugh. Save jack-o'-lanterns, kitchen scraps, laundry lint from dryer traps, mulch removed from garden beds, nutshells, oatmeal, and paper shreds, quarry dust, rye bread crust, and seaweed strands a few. Just add it to the pot and let it all rot into compost stew. Take tea bags plucked from long hot swimmings. He's putting the tea bags in. Underbrush prunings, cutting them away, and vegetable trimmings. Oops, sorry. Wiggly worms with compost cravings, Christmas tree needles and yellow pine shavings. And zinnia heads from flower beds whose blooming days are through. Just add it to the pot and let it all rot into compost stew. The goose is adding a plum. Moisten, toss lightly, cover, let brew. And when the cooking is complete, Mother Earth will have a treat. Dark and crumbly, rich and sweet. Now open the pot, and what have you got? Compost stew. One more page. This page tells us what not to put into compost stew, and I have to stand back a bit to read it. Let me get it. It says, out of pumpkins, low on flies, get creative, improvise. You can always substitute any veggie, plant, or fruit. But please recycle them instead. They won't break down. No, not a shred of metal. Don't put it in there. Plastic. Don't add that into your compost. Packing foam or chemicals found in the home. What's more, no meat or dairy, please. No bones or gravy, fish or cheese, for these will cause an awful smell, attracting animals as well. Earthy? Yes. Meaty? No. Not synthetic, stop. Natural? Go. So spice it up, but be judicious. Keep it wholesome and nutritious. Mother Earth will say delicious compost stew. Those were all things that they don't want you to put into the compost stew. So I'm going to slide my card over here. I think I'm going to stand on this side. Slide my Earth Day book down. So we talked about trash. Let's get back a little bit. Here's good. Trash. Plastic. Cans. Cups. Can go into the trash. What the Earth Day wants us to do and remember to do as an environmental person that's being aware and being a good citizen and taking care and keeping the earth healthy is to not just throw it out to the corner. We can recycle these, and they can take them off and they can turn them in to a brand new plastic bottle, a brand new aluminum can, or a brand new plastic cup that we can drink out of. Now she talks about compost stew, taking trash and turning it into soil. It's black and rich and crumbly. Let's take a look at, my worms are somewhere. Oh, they're here. Okay, let's take a look. So these are some things that I picked up out of my yard that I'm going to actually make a little compost stew. I picked up some sticks that were in my yard. These would be like the prunings that she talks about in the story. These are dried leaves. I can put these down in here in my compost stew. Truly, this week I ate pistachios. I could have thrown those in the garbage and added more trash to the corner this week. But I can put them down here in my compost stew. And we can mix this all up with my peppers that I cooked last night. You know, the inside part of the bell pepper that you don't eat? It can go in there. I have a bulldog at my house. She's a French bulldog puppy, and she likes to shred paper. Yes, she does. It's a true story. And here I have some paper that she got a hold of and shredded into nothing. It was actually some mail. So we can put that in there because it says paper. It's not metal. It's not plastic. It's earthy. Talked in the story about tea bags. Do you drink tea at your house? It can all go in. Oh, here's the rest of my pepper that we didn't eat. The core, the center. They talked about crushed eggshells. I hard-boiled some eggs this week. I could have thrown it out in the garbage, but I'm going to put it inside here. Do you ever eat an apple? It can go in. Oh, every day I drink my coffee, and the coffee grinds can go in. And a bruised banana. This one's bruised. I found it at the bottom of my fruit bowl, and yuck. So I'm going to put it down in here. I don't know if you noticed. I like this too, and I didn't even think about it. Dryer lint can go in your compost. Yeah, dryer lint. There's a couple more leaves. And what I loved in that story is she talks about these guys right here, wiggly worms. Does she say to put them in the compost stew? Here's a big guy. Look at him. Earthworms are the main ingredient in compost stew. So I have him. I think there's a couple more in here. Oh yeah, here's one. I'll just dump the whole thing in there. Let's just do that. Because when I pull on him, we're going to find out what happens if I break him in two. Look how big these guys are. Do you know that they're the main ingredient in your compost stew? Let's read and find out why. Because these guys are garbage devourers. The best kind of garbage, can't be that plastic garbage. Oh, there's another one. Here he comes. Ugh. Compost stew is kind of icky. I need to wipe my hands off before I touch my books. They're garbage devourers, earthworms are. Let's read and learn about what they do and why they're a main ingredient. In the poem, it said, wiggly worms with compost cravings. And that's what they have, too, is a compost craving. Let's take a look inside this book. It's called Earthworms, Underground Burrowers. I'm going to read this to you. And let's find out why it's so important to have these guys as part of our compost stew. In a nonfiction book, the author's purpose is written. They write it to inform us. The author of this book, her name is Adele Richardson, and it's a Bridgestone book. Earthworms, Underground Burrowers. Table of contents is always part of a nonfiction book. It gives you a clue on each page if you're looking for a specific thing. That's what I love about nonfiction. We don't usually have to read the whole thing, but today I'm going to read it to you. You might learn something because I know I did. It says earthworms have long, thin bodies covered by moist skin. They have small hairs called, I don't know how to pronounce this word here. So you know what I'm going to do in this nonfiction book? I'm going to go to the back. I don't know if you know this or not, but in nonfiction books, there's a thing called a glossary. It's a mini dictionary in the back. Sometimes it's called Words to Know. It says CHAETAE, KT are small hairs. KT help protect earthworms from their enemies. So that is pronounced KT, and they're small hairs on worms. Let's go back. KT. KT. Okay, they have small hairs called KT all over their bodies. A clitellum wraps around their middle of the body. Both ends of earthworms are pointed. An earthworm's head often looks like its tail. Did you know earthworms have hairs all over their bodies? I didn't. I thought they were slimy and slick. I didn't feel hairs on them. It says earthworms are invertebrates. Earthworms do not have backbones. Earthworms are also annelids. Annelids have long, soft bodies made up of many ring-shaped segments. And I don't know if you can see in this picture very well, but each one, he's got segments going all the way down his body. And if you can see really closely, here you can see his KT, the hairs underneath on his on the bottom side of his body that help him grab onto the earth. Earthworms often crawl in warm, wet soil. Some earthworms live close to the surface of the soil. Others dig deep burrows in the ground. Earthworms hide from enemies under rocks, logs, or rotting leaves. A burrow is a hole or tunnel under the ground where an animal lives. And I don't know if you realize this about earthworms, but earthworms in their burrows provide holes under the earth for water to be able to get into the plants. Also, other little animals and microbes can get into those little tunnels. Without earthworms, water wouldn't seep into the ground, and the other little animals wouldn't be able to get down into the soil without them. Here's a fun fact. Earthworms breathe through their skin. What do earthworms eat? Here we go. Earthworms eat rotting plants and vegetables. This is going to be rotting in a few days, and they're going to eat it. They also eat the remains of animals. Earthworms swallow soil and small rocks with their food. The soil and the rocks help earthworms grind up food inside their bodies. Here's a fun fact. Earthworms have 5 hearts. Each heart pumps blood to a different part of its body. Young earthworms. Adult earthworms do not take care of their young. Young earthworms are smaller than adult earthworms, but they grow quickly. A young earthworm can be an adult in about 90 days. Adult earthworms do not live long. Many die about 1 week after being in the wild. Fun fact, earthworms do not have eyes. They use eye spots to sense light. Earthworms, such as night crawlers, only come to the surface of the soil when it's dark. Night crawlers usually live in deep burrows, and earthworms usually feel the ground because of the vibration. That's how they know something, since they don't have eyes. Earthworm enemies. Earthworms have many enemies. Birds, frogs, and snakes eat earthworms. Some people use earthworms for fishing bait. Katie, help earthworms protect themselves from enemies. Earthworms grab onto the sides of their burrow with these hairs. Have you ever seen a robin trying to pull a worm out of the ground? And it looks like the worm is winning because he can't get it to come right out. You'd think it would slide right out. But because of those tiny hairs on its body, he's like pushing back with his feet and all his feet to keep himself down in that hole. The snake is eating this worm for lunch. Earth regeneration. That's something that earthworms can do. Earthworms can regenerate, which is really cool. An enemy sometimes breaks an earthworm's body apart. Earthworms can sometimes grow a new tail or a head. They often die when they try to grow a new head. Earthworms cannot eat without their head. That makes sense. There can be many sizes of earthworms. Some can be 1 inch tall, about 1 inch long or tall, long. And then the African earthworm, the longest one in the world, can be 22 feet long. That is huge. 22 feet. Get out a tape measure and see how long that is. Have your dad help you. String that across the floor. 22 feet. That's a big worm. That's a lot of fishing bait. It says fertilizing the soil. Earthworm castings help the soil in gardens and fields stay rich and healthy. Some people have earthworm bins. They put earthworms and rotting food inside these bins. Earthworms eat the food and make castings. People then use the castings to fertilize their gardens. Look at the color of this soil. Without the earthworm castings and turning that food and that rotting stuff into this dark, rich soil, they eat it and then they push it out of their body, and it's called castings. A tomato plant without this kind of soil would only grow maybe 1 tomato. But when you use this composted soil, a tomato plant will then make tons of tomatoes because the minerals that are in the soil make the tomato plant very happy. Earthworms. Did you learn anything? I hope you did. I did when I read through this earthworm book. So I've got my compost stew, and my earthworms are going to go down in there and eat that up, and I'm going to take pictures and post these things as this goes. I read that my stew will take anywhere from 4 weeks to 12 months to turn in to rich, dark soil. That means the banana peeling will be gone, the apple core, the tea bag, coffee ground. Can you believe that? I can't wait to keep watching and looking and seeing if that turns into that rich soil. And then I don't have tomato plants, but I do have flower plants. And I plan to take all of this rich, beautiful soil to help keep the earth healthy. And I'm going to dump that on my flowers to give them some great minerals to grow from. Now that book and all that information, even though that poem was a little rhyming poem, even that little poem was a rhyming poem, it was nonfiction. She was giving us good advice on what to use to mix up our own compost stew. Could you do that at home? Could you get someone to help you find a container? It doesn't have to be anything special. And could you start paying attention at home this week, the things that you're throwing out to the curb? The plastic, the glass, the metal. Those things can't go in your compost stew. They can be recycled and reused. But those food scraps, and if you eat pistachios or sunflower seeds, could those go in it? They can. And you could start collecting those things, and you could put it in a little bucket, and you could mix it all, cover it, and let it sit. Don't forget to put the wiggly worms with compost cravings in your stew. And check it. I think you'll be surprised at what's going to happen in a few weeks. If you make it smaller, I think it might go faster. The bigger the stew, the longer it's going to take to make. So I paired a little fun fiction story here with that nonfiction book that we just learned from about worms. And here we have the diary of a worm. This little guy is sitting in a garden somewhere with his pencil and his journal on a mushroom with a little red hat. Diary of a Worm by Doreen Cronin, pictures by Harry Bliss. Let's find, what would a worm, if they could write, what would they write in their journal? Do you have an idea? I have a couple of ideas. Let's read and find out what this little guy puts in his book. Diary of a Worm by Doreen Cronin, pictures by Harry Bliss. This is another HarperCollins book. March 20th. My mom says there are 3 things I should always remember. The earth gives us everything we need. We dig 2. Number 1. Number 2, when we dig tunnels, we help take care of the earth. Must make tunnel, help earth breathe. There he goes. Number 3, never bother Daddy when he's eating the newspaper. Here he is, chomp, chomp. March 29th. Today I tried to teach Spider, his best friend, how to dig. First of all, his legs got stuck. I think I might have twisted one of my ankles. And then he swallowed a bunch of dirt. I give up. Tomorrow, he's going to teach me how to walk upside down. March 30th. Worms cannot walk upside down. Help! Spidey saved him with his spider web. April 4th. Fishing season started today. We all dug deeper. They're down here in their burrow. Did you guys hear something? Wait. April 10th. It rained all night and the ground was soaked. We spent the entire day on the sidewalk. Hopscotch is a very dangerous game. It certainly is from the worm's perspective, isn't it? Ah! April 15th. I forgot my lunch today. I got so hungry that I ate my homework. My teacher made me write, I will not eat my homework 10 times. When I was finished, I ate that too. April 20th, I snuck up on some kids in the park today. They didn't hear me coming. I wiggled up right between them, and they screamed. I love when they do that. May 1st, Grandpa taught us that good manners are very important. So today I said good morning to the first ant I saw. Good morning. There were 600 more of them in the line. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. How you doing? Good morning. Nice to see you. Howdy. Good morning. I stood there all day. This is a journal. This is a diary. I can keep going. At one point, he does the hokey pokey, which is pretty fun. Diary of a worm. I don't know if you have a diary or a journal at home. That's something else you could do. You could record what your compost stew looks like. You could write about it, the things you added, the things you had for dinner. Writing and reading are two of the most important things you can do without a teacher, without the internet, without the television. If you'll read something and write something every day, no matter what grade you're starting next year, next school year in August, when we all get to come back and see each other again, you're going to be ready for school. Reading and writing are two of the most important things you can do. I have a little journal here. I have lots of journals. This is a pretty fancy one. Look at this peacock journal. It's a tiny little journal you can write in. I haven't written in this one before. And sometimes we get a fancy little pen to write. It makes it fun to write and draw. Do you have to have a fancy journal to write? Absolutely not. Here's a steno book. It's just a little notebook. Any piece of paper will work. This is what I want you to remember for the next few weeks. Read and write every day. I can't wait to see you in August, and I hope you have a great summer.
Good morning. It's Mrs. Owens from Sequoia Elementary. It's good to see you again. This will be our very last opportunity to come into your homes and do a little mini lesson, and it's been a pleasure each week to come into it. This week, I'm going to talk to you about something that's very dear to me. If you'll look at the screen, you'll notice that there are a couple of cows out grazing on a field. This is one of my very favorite things. And you might say, that's weird, Mrs. Owens. A cow is your favorite thing? Well, let me give you a little bit of background. I was raised on a cattle ranch all my life. That was my dad's passion. His dream was, as a young man, was to own his own cattle ranch. And he started small. He first bought land around us. Then he began to build fences. And then he bought a small herd. And it has grown through the years to a nice sized little cattle ranch, and that's actually where I live. So I have been around cows all my life. The story that I'm going to share with you today has to do with someone who is very fond of cows. But the story is so incredibly powerful. It is a story that will teach lessons to both children and adults and teachers. And I can't wait to share it with you. Before we get started, though, let me tell you about the ELA concept that we're going to talk about. If you watched Mrs. Woodson, that was on just before me, she talked about nonfiction. And funny, it's kind of fun when we piggyback off of each other. I think that's neat. She talked about nonfiction. She read about the earthworm. Well, nonfiction writing is based on real events, topics, and people. And this kind of writing gives facts. I have one of those books. I have a nonfiction book on cows. And if I were to read this book to you, you would just see that it just has tons of facts, statements about cows. Mrs. Woodson showed you how it has an index and it has a glossary, and that's how they're put together. But there's not just one kind of nonfiction genre. The story that I'm going to share with you today has a different nonfiction genre, and that is this one. We're going to talk today about literary nonfiction. Now, the difference between literary nonfiction and fiction and nonfiction is this. Literary nonfiction has the facts, but it reads like a story or a poem. The purpose that the author wrote the book for was to entertain you. So while we go through this book, it's going to be a book to entertain, but also teach. That's what makes it kind of unique and special. Prior to this week, I taught a lot of nonfiction or fiction pieces. We did Nerdy Birdie the first week, and then the second week we did Iggy Peck Architect, and we made sticky structures, and then last week we did The Legend of Rock, Paper, Scissors. So it's kind of fun to go to a different style of book, and that's why I chose this one. The title of my book this week is The Girl Who Thought in Pictures, the story of Dr. Temple Grandin. Now, in a literary nonfiction book, one of the things that we'll have to do a little differently is this. We're going to have to read closely and extract the facts. In other words, it's not just listed. The facts are not just listed. We have to pull the facts out of that in a literary nonfiction text. And that's what we'll do as we go through the story. Get ready, because this book's going to rock your world. It did mine. The Girl Who Thought in Pictures. Oh, you know how I love to look at all the parts of a new book? I bought this one too. Look at the cows. Isn't that cool? Again, favorite thing. All right, the writer of the book. Maybe I should get my glasses so I can see a little more clearly. The author of the book is Julia Finley Mosca. I'm going to move a little closer so you can see my pictures. It was illustrated by a man named Daniel Riley, The Girl Who Thought in Pictures. Now remember, this is a true story. Look at that. This is Dr. Temple Grandin. I want you to look at how she's dressed. That's part of this story. Look how she's sitting out in the field with a cow. And it starts like this. If you've ever felt different, if you've ever been low, if you don't quite fit in, there's a name you should know. Temple Grandin's that name. In her tale, you'll find glory. So get ready, get set for this cowgirl's true story. So they call her a cowgirl. She's got this traditional Western shirt on and her jeans, and she's sitting out there with a herd of cattle. In the city of Boston, one hot summer day, a sweet baby was born. It was Temple. Hooray! Look how cute she was as a baby. Unique from the start, an unusual girl, she loved spinning in circles and watching things twirl. Now, right off the bat, we get an idea or a little bit of insight into her as a baby. Said that she was unique from the start. Do you remember what that means? It means different, doesn't it? It means different. And it said that she loved spinning in circles. That's unusual, isn't it? But she also liked to watch things spin and tops. She was looking at that top and watching it go around and around. But some things she hated. Look at her here. Like certain loud sounds, they bothered her. Or bright, crowded places, large cities and towns. She didn't like that. Frilly dresses with tags made her itch, pull, and tug. Something else that she hated? A big, squeezy hug. Now think about that. We're talking about a baby. We're talking about a baby or a toddler. She doesn't like loud noises. She doesn't like itchy clothing. And she doesn't want to be touched or hugged. That's different, isn't it? Would that be unique? I think so. Look at her here. Can you tell by looking at the illustration what she's doing? She doesn't look very happy, does she? The writer says, a shy loner, this Temple. But when she got mad, when her feelings of stress and frustration got bad, quite a tantrum she'd throw. Kick, holler, bang, shriek. Yet still by age 3, not one word did she speak. Now think about that. 3 years old and not talking. And she had all of these things that her mom noticed that seemed different about her. So Mom, if you can see right there, it says doctor. Mom takes her to the doctor. They do some tests, and then this is what they tell her. She'll never be normal, was what some did say. Her brain, it's not quite right. You must send her away. Away? Not my Temple, her mother proclaimed. We will figure this out. You should all be ashamed. Well, her mother was not going to take that kind of news. She didn't want to send her daughter away. They had misdiagnosed Temple. Then little by little, though sometimes she balked, special teachers helped Temple. And one day, she talked. And that thing with her brain, it was autism. See? She was different, not less. They all finally agreed. Now, that is the line from the poem that I want you to take into your heart and hang on to it. I want you to say that. Different, not less. Say it again. Different, not less. Guys, that's so important because we're all different. We all have unique qualities about us. Yes, Temple's uniqueness stood out, but she wasn't less. She was just different. Now, as we move across, it says like most kids her age, she loved ice cream and art, like most kids. But the way Temple thought, that's what set her apart. If something was mentioned, for instance, a fly, in her mind, she'd see dozens of photos buzz by. And look at the illustrator. Somebody said fly, and in her mind, it pops up all of these pictures. Sometimes it was just the magnified wing of the fly, and sometimes it was a different kind. I've done a lot of reading about her this week, and she describes it like if you were to Google an image and you put in an image, let's say you put in horse, and you pull it up on Google and you get all these hundreds of images. That's exactly what she sees in her mind every time somebody says something. That's different. When the time came for school, let's just say that was hard. Kids taunted and chased her all over the yard. They picked on poor Temple, how crazy it drove her. They teased her for saying things over and over and over and over and over. This page really made me sad as a teacher because I looked at the illustrations and see all these pointing fingers. These were the students in that class. They were yelling, "Look at her." And then somebody even threw a wadded paper wad over at her. And there she is. And it sounds like she's repeating herself a lot. Made me sad. Until finally, she snapped. You know what they mean by that? She got really mad. Now remember in the earlier pages how she threw tantrums and such? She's older now, but she could only take so much. Yes, she did. She lost her cool, threw a book at a kid, and she was kicked out of school. No one really got Temple, but well, then again, the truth of it was, Temple didn't get them. She didn't understand them. "You need time away," said her mom. "That's what's best. You'll go visit your aunt on a ranch way out west." She had an aunt that lived on a ranch in Arizona. Temple was 14 when this happened, when she got kicked out of the regular school, and she went to live that summer with her aunt in Arizona. But it was a huge turning point in Temple's life. A lot of things changed for Temple once she spent that summer on the ranch. And that's where Temple became very much interested in animals. Because guess what? Fitting in on a farm, that was less stress, since the pigs didn't care if her hair was a mess. You remember, she didn't like clothes touching. She didn't like things. She didn't like to take baths and things like that. But, the pigs didn't really care. Quite a sweet spot she had for the cows in their herds, such big, gentle beasts who knew nothing of words. As she watched her new friends, a thought popped in her head. These cows think like me, in pictures instead. And you can see how the illustrator shows the cow. And then here's Temple, and this is her thinking in pictures. What she did was she just stood at the farm and she just watched for hours. She watched the animals. She watched their mannerisms. She watched the family work the cows, move them from one place to another. She saw things that she had never seen before, and she was totally intrigued by all of this. Now, the summer came to an end, and it was time to go back to school, and she changed schools that year. At a new school that fall, Temple found more support and a teacher who taught her, "You'll never fall short." I'm so thankful for that teacher that saw her differences and realized that she was something special. When you find what you're good at, like science, you'll soar. And that teacher was right. He had opened a door. He had worked for NASA before becoming a teacher. And so he had a science mind, and he realized early on that she was very unique. So she built a machine like she'd seen on some farms. an invention that hugged her with boards and not arms. It worked. She'd done it. From memory, it's true. And just like the cows, it made Temple calm too. Now, this is what she saw on the farm in Arizona that summer. And it's a squeeze chute that you use when you're working cattle. And you can squeeze the bars in, and it calms the cattle down. And that's how you give them vaccinations and things like that. We just did that this weekend. She built one very similar, and it would squeeze her tight, and she would feel calm. She did that when she was a senior, and it said that she was able to build this just from the memories of what she had seen on the ranch that summer. I'm special, she thought, like a bright shooting star. My attention to details could help me go far. And you can just see she's drawing, and she's thinking about the cows. This cow has a teardrop. I don't know if you can see it. It's got a teardrop, and it's mooing. She even figured out why they do that. And she discovered some interesting things about the beef cattle that she dealt with. Here's the farmer trying to move them. Here he is trying to bark orders at them, and they're all confused. Through her studies, she learned there were farms not so kind. I will help them, she said. Some solutions she'd find. And then something cool. Can you guess? Could it be? Off to college she went. A degree? She earned 3. She got her bachelor's degree in psychology, and then she got an animal science degree, master degree, and then she went on to become a doctor in animal science. And the ladies weren't experts on farms at the time. Do you think that stopped Temple? No way. She did fine. She stepped through that door and went forward. No tears. She took on the world. But at times she had fears because some things were scary, like people she'd meet who'd ignore her ideas and, well, wouldn't be sweet. She didn't stop. She had perseverance, but she never gave up. Learned her stuff through and through, like why cattle will circle and what makes them moo. And look, she's writing. Look at her shirts. She's got that same kind of cowboy shirt on. Now, if you look over here, she's drawing and designing. To build better farms was her goal. She would do it. Be kind to our creatures. They have feelings. She knew it. And here she's designing. And here, remember, she learned that they walk in circles. And so here she's designing a trail, set of cattle pens, and the cows are going to make that circle. And she said they'll do it with ease. And slowly but surely, she changed many minds until farm after farm built her awesome designs. Look at this pen. Now, if you're at all familiar with cattle, or if you've ever walked out in a pasture where cattle have been for any length of time, you'll notice that there are these little pathways in a pasture where cows are, and they're maybe about a foot wide, and there's no grass there. There'll be grass all the way around, but they will meander like this through the pasture. They're never straight. If you walk down, I used to walk down and follow them because you didn't get the grass all over you when you did that. And she figured that out. Word spread about Temple. Her feet's not so small. Temple Grandin? She's grand. She's the grandest of all. I want you to notice down here, there's a book. And on that book, it says, Livestock Handling and Transport by Temple Grandin. She wrote a book, friends. This little girl that didn't talk, she wrote a book. Now, for these things and more, she's won honors and prizes. And a movie was made. But the biggest surprise is that girl with a future that couldn't be bleaker. Yes, the once silent girl. She's now a big speaker. She goes around the world talking and giving speeches. Look how the airplanes are taking her all across the country. Today, she spreads hope with her stories and speeches from New York to Sydney to Rome. Temple teaches. Each person is special. So unique are our minds. This world needs your ideas. It takes brains of all kinds. There she is. There's her cowgirl shirt. She also wears a scarf if you see her. Almost all the pictures, she has that on. So here's the lesson. Feeling odd or different, being different might just be what makes you so neat. Don't let doubt hold you back, not for 1 minute more. Stand tall and like Temple, march right through that door. Gosh, have you ever felt different? Have you ever been offbeat? Remember that phrase? What did I say? She was different, not less. Now, I'm going to get really close so you can see that. That's a picture. It's an actual picture of Dr. Temple Grandin around a herd of cattle, and she wrote you a letter. And she said, "Dear reader, as a child, I was really glad that my mother always encouraged my ability in art. I encourage you to find something you are good at and work on developing it. If you are interested in becoming a scientist like me, find cool new ways to look at things, such as microscopes and telescopes. Explore nature. Think up your own hands-on science experiments. Keep learning, especially from your mistakes. Temple Grandin." Now, I'm going to show you something else in the book in just a minute, but remember, we said we had to extract the facts, right? So, let's take a look. What made Dr. Grandin's way of thinking special? What was it that she did that was different than everyone else? The girl who thought in pictures. You bet. That's a fact right out of the book, that she was a visual thinker. And that's what we found out. That's what made her so different. Okay, here's another one. Why did Dr. Temple Grandin have a strong connection to cows? Was it like me, raised on a ranch and done that all your life? No. She found out that they thought like she did. They thought in their heads, not with words, but in pictures. That's what made that connection. How about this? Why is Temple Grandin's work so important to the farming industry? You might think, what's the big deal? She was able to make huge changes in the way that feedlots and slaughterhouses and different things in the beef cattle industry, the way that the cows were handled, made a huge impact on the product that they were able to produce because of the way that she treated the animals. She said they needed to be treated with respect, just like we did, and that's exactly what she did. Now, in the back of this book, they have done a really cool thing. They have made a timeline of her life. This is something that I would ask you to consider doing. This is the timeline. You'll see them in lots of history books and things like that. But notice this gray band across the page. That's the line. And this is Temple Grandin's life from when she was born until now. Here she was born in 1947. She was born on my grandmother's birthday, August the 29th. And she was born in Boston, Massachusetts. And then this is when she went to the doctor, and the doctor misdiagnosed her. They thought she had brain damage. But it wasn't until about a year later that they figured out, no, that wasn't it at all. She had autism. In 1951 is when she started to talk. She was 4 years old then. At 14 is when she went to spend the summer with her aunt. And then it just continues to go on down her life. Here's her senior year when she built the squeeze machine. Here's when she got her degrees. Here's when she wrote her book. Here's when she her life was made into a movie. Now that's on Amazon Prime if you guys have that. I rewatched it because I really liked it. But in 2010 was the movie. And this is a picture of her now. She lives in Fort Collins, Colorado. She's a professor and she does all that speaking. Now, I want to show you something that I created. Not sure how well you can see it, but something that you can do with popsicle sticks. This is my corral. And I tried to use what Temple used as my guidelines. I'm going to lift it up. I'm afraid my cow might fall. But if you'll notice, she learned that they needed to go through closed pens where they couldn't see through because they were easily distracted and frightened. And so I made my pen so that when they got to this part, they wouldn't be distracted by anything outside. And then notice how it curves. That's what she also found out, that they like to walk in circles, and they would come and do that easier. And then I'm just going to lay it down. But here's my squeeze, my hug machine. This is my squeeze chute right down there at the end. Popsicle sticks, friends. What can you create with popsicle sticks? Now, really quick, these are examples. These are our working pens at our ranch. You can see the curvature of the round tub and the solid walls and then the squeeze chute. But as we take it further, guys, do a timeline or possibly build yourself a set of corrals and a squeeze machine. And I want to leave you with this. Different, not less. If you're the orange, if you ever feel like the orange in a bunch of apples, celebrate it because you're different, not less. It's been a pleasure to be with you. Have a great summer vacation, and I'm anxious to see you in August.
Hello, it's Rochelle Helbig, and I am the Family and Consumer Science teacher here at Sequoia High School, and we are going to be doing quick breads and quick gifts today. So that's the name of our episode. Let's begin by washing our hands as usual. Remember, we're going to wash our hands for about 20 seconds between the fingers, on the backs of the hands, up the wrists, and get them nice and clean so we can begin. And use a paper towel if you have a paper towel, or just designate a towel that's going to be for hands for that day. Okay, so we will begin with the muffins, and we're going to use the muffin mixing method, which I have 1 egg, a half a cup of milk, a fourth of a cup of oil. And the muffin mixing method just means that we are going to have 2 bowls. So I'm going to beat up that egg right now. I have the oven on at 400, and then for our biscuits that we're going to make in a minute, I've got the oven on at 450. So in this bowl, I have 1.5 cups of flour, a half a cup of sugar, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, and a half a teaspoon of salt. So I'm just going to give that a quick little blend, stir that around, make a little well here, and then I'm going to add my liquid ingredients. And then begin stirring. Now, this is just a stir. This is not a beat or a whip or anything like that. We talked a lot about terms last week. We also talked a lot about measuring last week. So all these things that I have measured out, I was using my proper measuring techniques. For liquids, I use the liquid measuring cups. For dry ingredients, I use the dry measuring cups, and I level them off. So remember those things that we did last week, but wanted to kind of speed things up so you weren't watching me measure again this week, but actually getting some things done. Now, I just want to stir this until all of the dry have been incorporated, are moist, and I don't want to stir it vigorously. Then I'm going to gently put in my chocolate chips, or you might want to use blueberries, or whatever you choose to do is fine. But I used about a half a cup for this. Again, I don't want to over stir. I've got my liners already in my muffin pan, and I'm just going to take, kind of like we did with our drop cookies, I'm going to just take a spoonful of batter and put it into the muffin cups. Okay, and I want to fill these up to about 2/3. So I'll just do like 1 scoop in each one, and then I can go back and fill them up if I need to make them a little bit fuller. Like I said, it's okay for the dough to look a little lumpy. It's not going to be real smooth. You'll notice it's a little thicker than like a cake batter, but it's not as thick as like the snickerdoodle cookies that we made last week. So just spoon it in there. Just about got that. And I am going to put my sugar away, but I should have left it out. I am going to put just a tiny bit of sugar on top to give it a little shine. So I'm just going to grab that. You don't have to do this, but I like to do it. I just sprinkle just a tiny bit of sugar on top of each muffin, and that just kind of makes them a little sparkly, a little shiny. And then I'll put these up in the oven for 20 minutes at 400 degrees. This one's ready to go. Okay. Now we're going to move on to our drop biscuits. Okay. These are cheesy drop biscuits, and I have 2 cups of flour, 1 tablespoon of baking powder, a half a teaspoon of salt here, and I'm just going to give that a little stir with my pastry blender. And then I'm going to cut in the 1/3 cup shortening. Now, you ask, why are these called quick breads? Well, these breads that we're doing today are all quick breads because we use baking powder for our leavening agent. You could use a baking soda and an acid ingredient. That's how baking powder and baking soda is different. The baking powder already has an acid ingredient in it, and the baking soda you would need to add an acid ingredient. Remember last week our snickerdoodles we had this baking soda and then a cream of tartar. So that was the acid. So with the yeast bread versus the quick breads, the yeast breads take a long time. You have to knead the dough a lot, let it rest, and then mix and knead and rest and shape and rest, and it just takes hours versus these muffins and biscuits, which take, minutes to do. So, all right, I've got that mixed up into a little fine crumb. So I'm going to make sure I get all my shortening in there off my pastry blender. Okay, so I've got my flour, baking powder, salt. I've cut in my shortening, and now I'm going to mix in 1 cup of milk and a 1/2 cup of cheddar cheese. So here's my 1 cup of milk and my 1/2 cup of cheddar cheese. I'm just going to mix those things in there together. Again, this is a mix, this is a stir, this is not beat it to death kind of stuff. All right, now I've already sprayed my pan, and I'm just going to do, like it said, this is a drop biscuit, and I'm just going to drop a spoonful of the biscuit onto my baking sheet. And then these will be baked at a 450-degree oven for about 10 minutes. I wanted to say again, I'm working with a lot of flour here, and I wanted to say again, thank you to Shawnee Mills for donating flour and discounted flour for us for our departments this year. It's been, I know I've used it, and it's been a great help to have that. Was awfully nice of them to do that for all the FACS departments in the state. Okay, I'm going to put one more right up there. Now, besides that, I'm going to add just a little bit of a garlic butter on top of each one. After we bake it, then I will put a little bit more on there after they've been baked. This sure smells good. All right. Like I said, I'll put a little bit more of that on after they get out of the oven. Okay, so 10 minutes at 450 for the drop biscuits. Put them in there. And, nope, timer. Okay. And then the last quick bread that we're going to make today is just a plain old biscuit. Okay. Now I'm going to give this a little bit of a wipe down real quick because we are going to need to knead this dough just a few times. So I want to make sure my counter is good, and I've washed it off already once today, but I'm going to wash it off again. So it'll be nice and ready for us. Okay. So in this bowl, I have, whoops, I'm losing my microphone. We've kind of had microphone issues today. In this bowl, I have 2 cups of flour, 1 tablespoon of sugar, 1 tablespoon of baking powder, 1 teaspoon of salt. So I'm just going to give that a mix. And then I have a 1/2 cup, and I use the stick method to measure my shortening today. I have a 1/2 cup of shortening, and I'm just going to cut that in also until it makes fine crumbs. Now, if you'll notice on your baking powder can, it says double acting. And what that's referring to is the baking powder begins its leavening process when it gets moist, and then again it kicks in when it gets heated. So it's kind of got a double duty on the leavening there. Okay, so I'm just up and down motion on my cutting in of my shortening and my flour mixture here till that gets nice and crumbly. Okay, and then I'm going to put in my 3/4 of a cup of milk all at once here and give that a stir. Okay, now that's looking good. It's forming a ball, which is what we want it to do. And then I'm going to just have a little bit of flour down here on, and then this does ask us to knead it. So I'm just going to knead it 10 times. It asks us to knead it. And the kneading is just mixing these things together some more and helping that gluten form some structure and texture for our product. Okay, so I've got it in a ball, and I'm just going to bring the dough towards me and then push it with the heels of my hands, turn it, bring it towards me, push, turn, push, turn. I want to do that around 10 times, and I've already lost count, so I think I'm on about 5. Okay, that's good. Now, I want to shape this into a circle. And if you don't have a rolling pin at home, you can just use a glass. So we're just going to use a glass because this glass also doubles as my cutter. So I'm going to roll this out till it's about 1/2 inch thick. And I'm going to put these biscuits on an ungreased cookie sheet. So let's see here. That looks about right. Okay. Now, if you like your biscuits to be soft all the way around, then you would put your biscuits to where they touched one another, right up against each other. If you want them to be crispy all the way around, then you need to make sure that you give them some space and so that they don't rise and bake into one another. Okay, so just take that dough again, form it up a ball again. Don't have much flour left on my board. Roll it out just a little bit more. Like I said, around 1/2 inch. And then cut it with the top of my glass here. Okay, one more. It does make 12. We're just going to call this one our last one and just kind of work it like we did our Play-Doh. Just kind of make it into a shape. That one's a little bit big. Okay, we'll put this in the oven at 450, also for about 10 minutes. So I'm going to stick that in there. When this one dings, I'm going to remember that I have about 5.5 minutes left for the second one, so I'll reset my timer. Okay, so that's just some quick breads. Now I want to talk about some quick gifts. One nice gift that you might like to use for, I'm going to wash my hands again as we do constantly in the kitchen. One nice gift that you might want to make for Mother's Day, even on Sunday, is some chocolate-covered strawberries. That makes a really fancy looking, very simple gift for someone. And so to make chocolate-covered strawberries, you need to wash your strawberries and dry them, and then melt your chocolate. And I'm just using a milk chocolate chip today. So I've got milk chocolate chip in here, and like I said, I've already been using some, but I want to put it on for, well, stop that. Put it on for like 20 seconds at half power. And just keep doing that over and over again. 20, 30 seconds at half power, stir it, 20, 30 seconds, half power until you get it melted and nice. Now, I have a few already done and drying, and then just have a nice platter or a pretty plate of some sort that you can put them on and make them into a nice little gift. You might find a platter or something that you want to give to Mom, and she can have the platter after she finishes the strawberries. So now I'm just going to give this a stir. If you want to transfer this chocolate into a thinner, smaller cup of some sort so that when you dip it, you actually get the strawberry all the way down into the chocolate, that's a good idea. You can do that. I'm just going to kind of dip it in there one side, kind of roll it around to the other, take my spoon, make sure it gets up on the edges where I want it, and then voila, we have a chocolate dipped strawberry. Okay. If you want to get fancy, you can melt maybe like a semi-sweet chocolate or a white chocolate, and just put some little drizzles on there or whatnot. You can even check out like how to make a tuxedo strawberry. Those are a little bit more, definitely more advanced. So you just take the strawberries, put them on your platter, and voila, you've got a nice gift to give to Mom or whoever. Okay, I'm going to wash my hands again because I've got chocolate on them, and then we're going to go to our sewing projects. How much time do we have left, Mr. Osborne? Because I have no idea either. Okay. 7 minutes, great. 7 minutes. I think I should be able to get through the sewing projects that I have for you today. Quick gifts. Well, I started thinking about quick gifts, and I started thinking about some baby gifts. I have a niece that's expecting in July, and so I've been making things and thinking about her. But some of the things that we've even done in class, you can make into baby gifts. So you all remember in Facts 1 we made a 9 patch for a pillow. Well, if you just add some ribbons on the end, a backing, and then turn it around, you've got a really cute little feely quilt. And I used soft fuzzy types fabrics also for my front there. Another fun thing is just a block. It's just 6 squares, and then you sew it, stuff it, turn it, and hand sew the end. Now this is a fun one. I received one of these with my first child, and these are fun and easy to make. All it is a bath towel. And then you take a hand towel, you sew one end of the hand towel, and then just turn it. And then you just place that in the middle of your bath towel, giving enough room here for a small child's head, of course. And then you just top stitch a big rectangle on top. And then so you've got a hand towel and one bath towel, and it makes a really cute hooded towel for a small child. Okay. I also have some things for Mom. There's 2 different varieties of nursing covers. I had never seen those before. We just used a blanket and threw it across, but voila, they've just put a strap on that, and you've got a nursing cover that hopefully won't blow off. This one is made out of knit, so I just kind of made a tube out of it, and so you could put it around also, a tube. Okay. 5 minutes left, they say. All right, another idea with that 9 patch that I love to make I Spy quilts for small children and for baby gifts, that first year baby gift. This is just a 9 patch, and I use different colors kind of as my middle, and then bordered that 9 patch with a 1.5 inch border in the same color, and then those borders create your sashing. So you don't have to do any sashing with this. It's just those 9 big squares all put together, and I used 9 different colors. Something else that I created last night, my niece said, I want one of those car seat covers, that you can put on your car seat and then carry them around, and they've got the babies are covered. So this is just like 45 by 45 square, and I kind of curved the edges, and then I made a little piece that has Velcro on it that will, and sewed it to the blanket, and just went ahead and put it right there and there, and it works. So that's that. Now here's our big surprise. I've got a couple of girls have had me for 3 years. So if you've had my class for 3 years, I make you a teddy bear. So I have 3 teddy bears here to show off so that they can be looking today, and then they can email me or let me know which teddy bear you like. Okay, we've got that one. That one has got some feathers on it, some purple and turquoise. This one is some teal, some pastel-y kind of colors, pink bow. And then we've got one that's just a baby blue and pink, and it's got some fabric that's got some cute words on there. So anyway, you know who you are. And Jessica, be looking at the teddy bears and decide which one you want. Like I said, if you've had my class 3 years, then I'll make you a teddy bear. Okay, let's check out our quick breads and see how they're doing. I have a feeling some of them are probably ready to come out of there. Almost. Yes, very close. So let me go ahead and, how much time do we have? I'll go ahead and get them out so that you can see them. Okay, perfect. 2.5, wonderful. So I'm going to go ahead and get these out so you can see what they're going to look like. I might have to put them in just to get them a little bit browner. We'll see. I'll put some out here. Get my dishes. Got a lot of dishes. Okay, these are looking great. And like I said, when you put a little bit of sugar on there, it just kind of gives it a little bit of a shine. So those are looking good. And then the cheesy biscuits. Okay, these are looking great. And I'm going to put just a little bit more butter, garlic butter on those. Maybe pop those back in the oven just for a little bit. They could be just a little bit browner. And then we've got our regular biscuits, which are looking great, but they do need a few more minutes. So I'm going to leave those in there. So just wanted to say thank you to RSU TV for allowing Sequoia teachers to be part of this home learning. I feel like it's been a great opportunity. It's been a lot of fun for me to see the kids virtually. So it's been a good time. We appreciate the opportunity, and we're looking forward to seeing you all next fall. If you have any questions about any sewing projects, any cooking things this summer, guys, you can get a hold of me on rochelle.helbig@sequoiaeagles.net. And we really appreciate you watching. And so long for now. We'll see you next fall. Have a fantastic summer. Thank you very much.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. I'm excited that you're here for what'll be my last time being on the air with you guys. And so, first off, we have to get important things out of the way. Today is Cinco de Mayo, right? It's Taco Tuesday, okay? But more importantly, Jennifer, I'm going to interview you on camera right now.
Okay.
Why do we celebrate? Why do people of Mexican heritage celebrate Cinco de Mayo?
Some Independence Day, right? It's their Independence Day.
It celebrates the day that the Mexican army defeated the French army at the Battle of Pueblo on May 5th, 1865. The French army was they were kind of like the superpower at that time, led by Napoleon III, not the short one that we always talk about. This was like 2 Napoleons after that. So that's why we celebrate this. So I just thought that was kind of a fun little interesting tidbit to throw in there.
I was going to say Teacher Appreciation Day.
It's yeah. I would love some free chips and queso for Teacher Appreciation Day, but that's neither here nor there. So over the past couple of weeks, I've got a lot of questions, a lot of texts about gardening and how to grow your own food, where to get seeds at, what type of soil to use, and those types of things. And so if you've been following along, we've talked about soil the very first time. We've talked about some dairy stuff. We're going to kind of combine everything that we've talked about over the past 3 weeks into today through the guise of gardening. And so yesterday, got some wood that I had at the house, as well as went and bought just a couple of planks, and I built a box garden. And so I'm sure you've seen these, like if you're on like Pinterest or Facebook or whatever social media app that you so choose. And so I built one. It took me about maybe an hour, and that was also, not working at a feverish pace, but it's something real simple that you guys can make. And so basically I just made a 4 foot long by 2 foot box. It is just I have plywood down at the bottom there. It's 7 inches tall all the way around. Something real simple that you can fill with some gardening soil, and you can make your own little garden at home. And so we're going to talk about if you had something like this, or if you built something like this, what would it take to kind of get started, right? So you would need to know a couple of different things, what to put in it, what kind of seeds to get, how do you manage those different things. And that's going to be what we talk about today. Okay, next. Okay, so the first question is, Mr. Hossack, I got a box, right? What do I put in said box? Okay, so there's basically, you have 3 different kinds of options. Okay, we have topsoil, compost, and then a mix of the 2. All right, topsoil is good because it's going to have good structure. So if you think back to our soil lesson, okay, soil structure and the components of will determine how much water and nutrients basically that soil can hold. Okay, topsoil is good at holding water. Okay, so it's not going to dry out as fast as a compost, as well as it's also cheaper than the other ones, and it doesn't smell necessarily as bad. Okay, contrast that with compost. When we talk about the advantages of that, is going to be it's going to have more nutrients, right? And so when we talked about those different components of soil, right, the smallest one was organic matter. Okay, and so your compost is basically a bunch of organic matter that is breaking down and decomposing. Okay, so it's going to be a little bit more expensive because you more or less have to manufacture it. Sometimes it can smell bad, but it's going to be more nutrient dense. And so you may be thinking to yourself, well, why don't we just combine the 2? And that's exactly what has happened, and is actually what is ideal. So if you take a mixture of topsoil and compost that is finely ground, so we get all of the big pieces out of it, okay, and use that mix, that's going to be ideal for any type of home gardening that you're going to do. If you have a big area that you're going to till up and those sorts of things, this really doesn't apply, but this is talking about if you are going to maybe redo a flower bed, you're going to make a raised bed garden, those kinds of things. A good mix of topsoil and compost is going to be absolutely ideal to put in your new garden. Okay, so you may be thinking, all right, now I know I'm going to put a mix of topsoil and compost into our garden, but how much, or where do I get it at? Well, you can get it at most big box stores, hardware stores, those kinds of things. You can get it at Walmart and that kind of thing. Okay. As a general rule of thumb, if you're going to do a raised bed garden, you need at least 6 inches of soil for that to be for that to basically contain the root system and have enough nutrients for that plant to grow and develop throughout its life cycle. And that can be a little bit plant dependent, but for most garden plants, that's going to be more than sufficient. Okay, bags of compost are sold in cubic feet, usually 1.5 or 2 cubic foot per bag. And depending on the size of the bag can determine things like cost and that sort of thing. But you may be thinking, okay, well, I just randomly threw this box together. How do I figure out how many cubic feet I need, right? So cubic feet, thinking back to maybe geometry is probably when you learned that, maybe earlier, okay, is length times width times height in feet, right? And so if we have a 4 foot by 2 foot box, okay, and we need 6 inches of soil, right, to be able to fill this, okay, if we multiply all those together, we get right at 4 cubic feet of soil. Okay, these were 1x4s, so this is a chasing a squirrel into a separate direction, but a 1x4 is not actually 1 inch by 4 inches. Okay, it's actually going to be 3.5 inches by 3/4 of an inch. Okay, and so when we add these two together, there's 7 inches total of depth that we have in our garden. So if we fill it 6 inches up, right, we have a 1 inch space up at the top to shield the little plants from wind and keep things from spilling out. If we have to move this or whatever the case might be, it's almost like that's on purpose. So anyways, we know now how to calculate how much to be able to put in there. Okay, and then the next thing we need to talk about is seeds, right? Kind of the most important thing. You can just put a box of dirt in your yard and it's not going to be very productive, right? We need to put something in there to be able to sprout. I have 2 examples here today. I have some miniature bell peppers and some rosemary that are actually going to be put into this whenever I go home. My wife's happy about that. Okay. On the back of the package of seeds is going to be a lot of important information. Okay, and that can be found. Am I pointing right at it there, Chris? Okay. On there, we have days to germination, which is basically how many days is that seed going to take to sprout, more or less. We're going to talk about the germination process here in a second. Okay. In depth, days to harvest, and how far apart do we need to space our different rows. Okay, and we're going to talk about each of those different things individually as we go on here. Okay, we would be remiss if we didn't talk about the different parts of the seed. Okay, and they're going to be the same for pretty much all plants. And there's always ag and English are closer than you think. There's rules, but there's always like an exception to the rule. Okay, for the most part, these are all going to be the different parts of the seed. We're going to have an outer crust that's going to be hard. That's going to protect the seed, called the seed coat. We're going to have the actual embryo inside of there that's going to be made up of a bunch of different pieces. We're going to have a part called the endosperm, which is basically kind of a chalky material that fills kind of some of the voids and has some nutrient benefit for the developing embryo itself. Okay, but there's 2 different kinds, or I guess rather how seeds are classified is there's 2 different kinds. We have monocots and we have dicots. So if you think of like a monorail, if you've ever been to Disney World, or a monocle like the Monopoly Man, right, is mono meaning one. Okay, so a monocot is going to have a single cotyledon. And a cotyledon is basically a fancy term for the first part of the plant that goes up, right? It's going to be the first part of the leaves and stem that comes out of the soil. Okay, the radicle is the first part of the root that goes down. For this discussion, that's maybe not necessarily, that's just some extra information. Okay, so if a monocot only has one of those cotyledons, a dicot is going to have two, and there's some advantages and disadvantages to those, and that's maybe a little bit more in depth than our discussion today. But the important thing that we need to talk about is that seed coat, how it's going to protect the little embryo inside of the seed, but it's not a actual like a closed in. It's not like you put stuff in a bag and you seal it, right? It's going to be pulled out for gas exchange and water, and we're going to talk about why that's important here in a second. Okay, so germination is the process of taking is not the process of tripping over your microphone. That's what I'm doing right now. But germination is the process of seeds developing into a new plant. Okay, and there's several factors that must be met in order for those to, in order for germination to occur. That's going to be, we're going to have the seed, the correct depth in the soil. We're going to have the appropriate amount of water, as well as the right temperatures, whether that's the actual air temperature or the soil temperature. We have to meet all of these different factors in order for that seed to germinate. And luckily for you, we can accomplish most of these things even on the window in your bedroom. Okay, we're going to go into each of those a little bit more in depth here. Okay, when we talk about water, okay, water is right. You may have heard water is essential for all functions of life. Okay, it's definitely the case here. Okay, so that water is going to work its way into the soil. It's going to be absorbed into the seed through a process called imbibation. And basically that water's function is to not only fuel the processes of growth inside of that plant, but it activates an enzyme. And that enzyme is basically like an alarm clock that says, get up, it's time to start growing, right? So it's going to tell that little embryo, oh, okay, I need to sprout, and I need to start growing now. Okay. We can have, so if not enough water is present, okay, then that seed's not going to germinate. And that's kind of a survival tactic, I guess, for lack of a better term, for a seed not to germinate in conditions in which it's not going to be able to grow and be a viable plant. If they just started growing just sporadically, right, they might not be able to become, right, a full mature plant. Same thing if there's too much water. Okay, those plants still need atmospheric gases to be able to breathe and survive. And so if there's too much water, right, then that seed can drown. Okay, so that's not good. So all of these different factors that we're talking about fall within a range, right? Too little, not good. Too much, not good. We want to be in that happy median of these different factors. Okay, temperature is another big factor. Certain varieties of plants, some cool season plants, right, will require different temperatures to start the germination process than a warm season plant that might be growing now as opposed to germinating in the fall or even early winter time. Okay, that temperature is mostly about pertaining to the soil, and is that soil temperature warm enough for this to occur, but also could be the air temperature, right? If a seed germinates and starts to grow, and then there's the new little plant is exposed to freezing air, then that can basically destroy the process and kill the plant as well. This last one on here is kind of a fun little fact. There's certain species of grasses that actually require for that seed to go through a fire to be able to start the germination process. And so back in the day, before we had fire suppression and there was big grass fires that would sweep through the central United States, certain species evolved and developed to require that fire to basically break apart that seed coat to allow water to get into it in order for that plant to start growing. I just thought that was really cool. So you wouldn't think of like as fire being essential for plant growth. In certain cases, it definitely can be. Okay, seed depth is also going to be very important. Okay, if it is if a seed is buried too shallow, okay, that root is basically not going to be able to get down deep enough to be able to hold that plant in place. It can wash away or be exposed to too much sun, and it can dry out and die. Okay, if it is buried too deep, that seed doesn't have enough stored nutrients for that embryo plant to be able to make its way through the soil profile and up to where photosynthesis can start. Okay, so it's, again, we're going to talk about that range of too deep, not good, too shallow, not good. We need to be in that happy median, and that's why. So on our different packs of seeds here, okay, our miniature bell peppers need to be a 1/4 inch below the surface of the soil. And our rosemary is also at a 1/4 inch. So not all plants require a 1/4 inch of depth. That's fairly universal, but definitely not always the case, right? Some may be as little as an 1/8 inch of soil on top. Some may need to be even deeper, 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch, in order for the right conditions to be met for that seed to germinate. Okay, we talked about the parts of a seed. That's a lot of words. I'm going to break it down real simple for you. Okay, so basically, water is going to enter the seed. Okay, those enzymes within the seed are going to be activated, starting the growth process. The radicle, or the tip of the first root that's going to go out of the seed, is going to start to grow out and go down. That seed coat is going to crack open. Okay, and those cotyledons are going to start growing towards the surface, towards the surface of the soil. Okay, then those first little leaves are going to start growing in the direction of the sun, and that's photomorphogenesis. It's a big word that basically says they grow towards the light. Okay, how much time do we have left? Okay, so what we're going to do here is I'm going to show you basically a good way to how you can start growing seeds at home. Okay, so the first thing I guess you need to do is figure out what you want to grow, right? And so in this particular case, I have a herb that we're going to use for cooking as kind of some seasoning. And then we have some miniature bell peppers, and these are kind of unique things. These are kind of unique because they get about 1 inch, about 1 inch in diameter. So maybe just a little bit bigger than a ping pong ball, or about that size. And they're really sweet. But a thing to consider, okay, is the days of harvest. So it's not like you just plant a seed and then, a week, 2 weeks, and then, oh, here it is. It's ready, right? These plants need time to grow and to develop. And so whenever you're selecting whatever it is you're going to grow, if you look on the back of the package, right, there'll be a little number that says days to harvest. Okay. And so for these miniature bell peppers, it's 60 days. So about 2-ish months. Okay. These are going to be ready to go, right? So whereas if it was a mature bell pepper, like the ones, you might go get at the store, might be looking at 120 to 150 days, depending on the various varieties. So this project takes more planning than just, I'm just going to do this and it's going to be great for, I'll just put a week's effort into it and then I'll have something to eat here at the end. Okay. A lot of these herbs won't have a days till harvest. You can kind of let them grow as long as you want, and you can harvest them kind of as you're going. So this is a good point to talk about the different types of plants that are out there, right? So you have annuals, okay, which basically their entire life cycle is going to happen within 1 year or one growing season. So if you plant them in the spring, you harvest them in the fall, and that's it, right? That plant is no longer productive and no longer useful. Okay, you can have biannuals, which are good for basically 2 growing seasons. So you plant this spring, right? That plant would be good through basically 2 years from that planting date. Okay, and then you have annuals, which will repeat over and over and over again, season after season, for however long that particular plant is, or that plant's life cycle is. So things like trees, shrubs, even some ornamental plants, okay, would be annuals or perennials rather, and then your annuals are going to be a lot of your crops. So whether that's corn, tomatoes, peppers, those sorts of things. Okay, so if you have a little bit of potting soil at home and 2 little plastic cups, you can basically make a great little seed starter at your house. Okay, and so we're going to fill our cup up with our plant growth media. In this case, this is a topsoil, soil, and compost mix, just like what we talked about before. I'm going to go about 2/3 up the cup with the soil, and I'm going to poke. I'm going to take some scissors, okay, and I'm going to not run with them, okay, and I'm going to basically poke 2 little holes in the bottom of this cup, and I'm going to kind of move the scissors around to clear those holes out. And then I'm going to take another cup, and I'm going to drop it in. You can see there's a little bit of space down there. The purpose of that is to prevent, okay, the soil from basically, we talked earlier about drowning the seed, and that's not necessarily what we want to do. So those little holes at the bottom are going to allow the soil and plant growth media in here to hold as much water as it can, and then the excess is going to drain out into the bottom cup, and it's not going to go all over the countertop or the windowsill or wherever it is you might have this. Okay, so we have our cup prepared. I'm going to put one of the miniature bell peppers in here. The reason why I'm doing these in here and not a situation like this is because, one, I'm going to have to transplant these plants later to basically a different location because they're going to get too big, basically, one, to live in here, and I'm also me and my wife are moving houses, and so I want to be able to take these with me. So it's really selfish reasons there. So what I'm going to do is, okay, we're going to go down to a depth of 1/4 of an inch. Okay, I'm just going to cut the top off of these. Okay, so I'm taking 4 seeds, okay, because there's not a guarantee that all of these seeds are going to germinate, right? Not all of the conditions may be met perfectly for this to work out, as well as we may just have a bad seed. Okay? So I'm going to kind of hedge my bets with all 4 of these, so I'm just going to drop them in the cup. Okay, I'm going to kind of space them out. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my pointer finger, or if you're one of those people that don't like dirt on your finger, you could take a pencil. Also, don't talk to me. Just kidding. And I'm going to push these seeds down about 1/4 of an inch. Okay, and I'm going to take some of this other material, and I'm going to cover them with some of that dirt. I'm then going to take another cup of water, and I'm going to very delicately kind of wet this top of the soil, okay, so I make sure they get good and saturated, right, so those enzymes that we talked about can be active. And then I'm going to set this in a sunny place, and I'm just going to kind of let it work, right? If I come check it and it's really, really dry, okay, I'll add a little bit more water. And our days to germination is going to be 10 to 14. So in 10 to 14 days, okay, we should start to see some little plants start to come out of the soil. This is an important time to talk about that transplanting process. So if you've had a plant that you've been growing inside for a couple of weeks, right, and you're like, okay, it's getting too big for its container, I need to move it outside, I need to transplant it. There's a process called hardening. And this is very critical that you don't just take it and just put it outside real quick and then forget about it and move on. Your plant basically is not used to that environment. It's kind of like if you go to a movie theater, like around 5 or 6 o'clock, you watch a 2.5 hour movie, right? And then you come outside and it's really dark, and you're like, oh, I can't really see. Right? Your eyes haven't adjusted to the elements. That is not a good analogy. But kind of like if you're in an air-conditioned car and then you get outside and it's really hot and it seems like it's hotter than it is because you're not used to that temperature. That's a better analogy. Same thing with our plants. So hardening, basically what we're going to do is for a couple hours a day, we're going to put it outside in the sun and let it get used to that direct sunlight, that temperature, wind, all those different environmental factors that it needs. Okay, and that's an important process. The good thing about that is if it starts to, if you look at the weather forecast, you see a freeze coming, you can quickly move those things inside. Okay, a lot of plants are actually growing exclusively inside now. There's been a lot of development over the past couple of years. Since various industries have arisen in Oklahoma, there's been a lot of innovation into growing plants indoors. And so you could take something like this and you could get a light, right, to put above it that would give off the correct UV, the correct spectrum of light to be able to grow those plants the most efficiently. Okay. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, owen.hossack@sequoiaeagles.net. I appreciate this opportunity to be able to interact with you guys on a weekly basis. It has been fun, and it has been a learning experience for myself as manage what look good on camera and how would this work, and is this something kids could do at home, and those kinds of things. Didn't get any questions, I wouldn't imagine. Okay. Thanks again. I hope you guys have a absolutely fantastic summer. Hopefully things will get back to normal as quickly, more quickly than later. We have about 15 seconds left. And so, again, thank you guys. Have a good summer, and we hope to see you next fall.
Welcome back to Middle School Science. I'm Mr. Paul, and I'm coming from you from Sequoyah Public Schools. Today, we're going to do a few experiments. Actually, we're going to do experiments the entire time. We're not even going to have any PowerPoints or any other material today. So for the last few weeks, we've been talking about the different forms from solids, liquids, and gases and the particles within them. Now today, we're going to play with something that's a little bit contradictory to what we've been talking about. Now, we're going to play with some dry ice. Now, dry ice is one of my favorite experiments to do at the beginning of the year. We do it on Chapter 1 just because it helps create everything that's going to go in the year, especially talking about the particles. Now, before we begin, it's extremely important to not touch dry ice for any reason. It will burn you. Now, so today I am going to actually be using safety goggles and gloves throughout this entire experiment. Now, the first one, I'm going to do what you've already done last week, but I'm going to take a different spin on it. So if you remember last week, you got to use salt, milk, cream, and different components to make some ice cream. We're going to make ice cream today too, but we're going to do it in a different way. So what you're going to do for this one is you're going to need dry ice. And you need something to break it up really, really fine. Now, I'm not going to do it on camera. I've already done it. All you're going to hear is a lot of loud noises, so we're not going to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put about a half cup of dry ice. Now, if you actually do get to do dry ice, you'll notice that when you break them up really fine, it looks like sugar particles. And if you put it up on plastic or glass, it'll vibrate and make a sound. Now, if you do want to do any of these experiments at home, I got dry ice from Reese's today. You can get it for about $1.09 a pound, which they come in about 5-pound blocks. So it's pretty cheap, and you need one to do a whole bunch. I overbought with 2. So I got my dry ice in. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to use whole milk and heavy cream. You're going to do 2 to 1. So you want, if I use a half cup of milk, I only want to use a 1/4 cup of heavy cream. So as soon as the very first thing, as soon as we drop the milk in, you're going to notice some awesome steam coming off of it. Well, it's actually carbon dioxide in vapor form now. So we actually have a gas going off of it. Now, like I said, I'm going to put my gloves on today because this stuff will burn you, and I'm going to play with it in a few different ways. So I got my milk in. I'm going to mix it up a little bit. It's going to be super hard still. Look at that just coming off of it. Now, this is carbon dioxide, and it is a gas, but it's not going to rise. It's so heavy, it's actually going to sink to the floor. And if you decided you want to take a big old breath of this, it's actually going to make you catch your breath really, really hard, and then you're going to cough really bad because it is carbon dioxide. Now, it's not harmful to be around it, but I would not inhale it a lot for obvious reasons. So the next component that I'm going to put in is some heavy cream. And like I said, we're going to do 2 to 1. We're only going to put about a 1/4 cup of cream in this one. If I put my measuring cup on my side. I'm going to mix it up a little bit more. And if you can hear it, it's already becoming really, really hard. So last week when you had to really, really work for your ice cream, if you wanted to use the Epsom salt or a salt method and continually mix it, that's what you'd have to do. And this one's going to be a little bit easier. So I'm just going to put a little bit of vanilla in it. You can put chocolate syrup or strawberry syrup or anything like that you would like. So first I'm just going to put some vanilla in it to make some vanilla ice cream. Got to give it some flavoring. I'm going to mix it up a little bit more. Now, of course, we got to have some sugar. It's got to be sweet. If we don't have sugar, ice cream doesn't taste good, right? So I'm going to put about a half cup of sugar in it also. Then I'm going to add a little bit more milk because the dry ice has already started causing it to become ice cream. It's already becoming a solid again. So all that liquid that we put in earlier is already frozen. So like I said, if you ever made ice cream at home, you'd have to work for it and then put it in the freezer, or you'd have to churn it for a very long time. Well, my method took a little less work, and it's going to taste just as good. Now, what's those things called when you go to the mall? Those little dry balls, the dragon things. No, the dragon ones. I can't think of what they're called right now. Well, anyways, this is going to have the same kind of consistency as those that everyone likes to go and get from the mall. The ones that you put in your mouth and you blow out steam. So, in order to make it, that's all you got to do. Now, if you want it a little bit thinner, you need to add milk before it sets up because it is still cooling this entire time. And if I leave it alone in this bowl, as I will in a minute, it's going to become stuck to the bowl because of how cold it is. Now, the most important thing about this is you do not eat it right after you make it. You have to let it set, or it will stick to your tongue and it'll burn you. So I'm going to set this to the side, and I'm going to eat that at the end. So now I have my snack with maybe those chocolate strawberries that are over there. They're delicious. Okay, so that's experiment 1. So all you simply needed to do that was just a little bit of dry ice, some milk, some heavy cream, some vanilla, and some sugar. Took less than 5 minutes. Awesome summer experiment, and obviously anything that you can eat after you make an experiment, it's even better. So definitely try that one. So our next thing that we're going to do is we're going to set this experiment up because this one's going to take about 7 minutes to do. So we're going to cut up some red cabbage. Now, if you've been in my class before, we've used red cabbage for multiple. Red cabbage is actually a really good base indicator for pH levels. It sits about 11.6, and if you add different acids to it or bases, it will change in variation. It'll get lighter or it'll get darker. So today we're going to use it, and I'm going to show you some acids with it, and then I'm going to show you what dry ice will do to it also. So all you do is cut up a nice little chunk of it, and then you need to shred it a little bit more. So I'm going to dice it, be nice and safe, knuckles out. Again, most of these experiments today, you need to have a parent or guardian in the household with you to do it. Don't be doing any of this at home because it can be very dangerous if you do it by yourself. Especially, believe it or not, even the dry ice can burn you in severely at that. And of course, I'm using a knife, and I'm actually going to be using boiling water in a minute too. So those are very good things to have a guardian or an adult to supervise you while you're doing these. So, obviously, my cutting skills are not as good as some other people's, but we'll deal with it. So all you're going to do, you don't have to be a culinary master. You just need to shred it up a little bit, nice and pretty. And then I got 3 different sized beakers. And I'm going to put it in each one. Just enough to start getting some of that red cabbage out of there. Cut up a little bit more. Now, before we started, I actually put on some hot water behind me to start boiling. Lucky enough to have a stove in this classroom and not have to have it on a heat plate, which is awesome. So, I'm going to check on the water behind me. Okay. Good call. Good call. I'm going to move my ice cream cup now. Okay, so I got boiling water now. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take some hot water. Now I'm going to put it in the sink and pour it, so obviously I don't burn myself. And I'm going to add it to the red cabbage. Now, a second ago I said this is going to take a few minutes, about 5 minutes, because this is going to have to sit in order for the pH level of the water to consist of 11.6 and to take all that coloring out of the cabbage. Okay, so there's that. Now, there's no exact science to how much water you need for it. Just add as much as you want, and it'll slowly bleed out as it goes. So I'm going to set this to the side. Like I said, it's going to take about 5 to 10 minutes to set up properly. While I do that, I'm going to clean this cabbage that I made a mess. I'll slide this out of the way. Okay. So the very next thing that we're going to do, while that sets up, is probably the best experiment out of this, in my opinion. We are going to try to create liquid nitrogen. Now, obviously, we're not going to be able to get to around 350 degrees negative Fahrenheit, but we are going to get about halfway there. So, in this shortage that we're going on through right now with everything that's been going on, got to give a shout out to Bennett's Pharmacy for hooking me up with this. This is 99% alcohol. You can use it with 70% alcohol, but it won't have the same effects. Now, normally, you can be able to go to Walmart and you can get this with no problem. But again, with the pandemic, everything is in short supply. So I got lucky enough to get a hold of this, which is awesome. So what we're going to do is we're going to fill it up about halfway, about 250 milliliters of alcohol. Now, I am going to put my safety goggles back on for this one because for many reasons that this is going to get extremely cold. Dry ice hits about negative 110 Fahrenheit and alcohol freezes about 140. So what we're trying to do here is to keep the alcohol liquefied but bring down the temperature further. And when we do this, this is going to help freeze some different things. So when I put this in, you're going to notice an extremely violent reaction. It's going to be a little sporadic. It's going to push the dry ice around a little bit, and it's going to produce a lot of bubbles. Where is mine? There. Well, doesn't matter. So if you notice right off the bat, it almost looks like I'm boiling water right now. It's extremely violent. So, like I said, alcohol freezes about 140 Fahrenheit. So what we're trying to do here is lower the temperature, the surface temperature of the alcohol, so that we can create a substance to freeze things with. Now, if I put this in hot water, we're going to have a different reaction, which we're going to do in a little bit. But look out how the dry ice is being pushed around the container, and it's pushing all the bubbles up. Very violent reaction. So we're going to wait just a second so that cools down, or so that actually gets to where we want to be. And Mother's Day is coming up. I know you don't get to make all those awesome craft ideas that we do in class right now, but don't forget to make something for your mom. So today, I'm going to make some frozen roses for her. Well, actually, they're going to be broken before the end of it, but I'll show you. So, I'm going to get rid of some of these thorns and the extra leaf out of the way, just so I can dip it down with no problems. Or be like me and get stuck with a thorn right off the bat. Experiment with some frozen roses. But we're also going to do a few other things. So, typically when you're in my class, I always like to do candy. So, we're going to freeze some gummy worms. A little bit of chocolate. Maybe Twizzler. Now, there it is. Very important. So, since this is so cold, you cannot put anything in with your hands. If this touches you, it will be more severe than actually having the dry ice applied to your hand or anything. It is extremely cold. So, I know a lot of your moms have tongs or anything like that at home. So if you want to do this at home, make sure that you're using gloves first, eye protection, and something to put the stuff in. Because if not, it will burn you severely. Now, I am not even going to pull it out until it's fully dried off because of that. So, let's see. Start with the gummy worm. Let's go with the gummy worm. Now, if you ever had a gummy worm, it's pretty flimsy, stretchable, not hard at all, really soft. We're about to find out what happens. So I'm going to stick my gummy worm in there. there. Let it set for about, a minute. Come back over here. I'm going to grab this cutting board. Now, if you can tell, it's still cooling down. There's still a violent reaction, especially with that dry ice still in there. But if it's, even with gloves on, it is extremely cold. So, you notice right off the bat, my gummy worm isn't as bendy as what it was. Now, I'm going to make sure I get it completely dried off. I'm going to set it down. Now, I didn't set it on there for about 2 minutes, but if you notice right off the bat, it's a lot harder than it would be if I pulled one of these gummy worms apart. Pretty soft. So I'm going to throw a little bit more dry ice in there because I want to continue to make sure the temperature goes down. It's not quite as cold as what I want it yet, so I need a little bit more dry ice. So, the next thing, let's try it with the rose. Let's see what happens with the rose. What's the one we're going to sit in a little bit longer, and let's see if we can make one of those fairy tale dry ice roses. Just going to let it sit in there. I'm going to grab another one, do the same thing. Now, obviously, you can experiment. You can do several different things. You can do any kind of candy that you wanted, or test anything that's soft that maybe you're going to see the consistency change. And I'm going to actually put in a gummy worm in a second because it did not get the quite results that I wanted. So I'm going to set this one in just a little bit longer and pull it out in a minute. So I'm going to set this stuff to the side. Give that a couple seconds to cool down and freeze a little bit. Now, if you notice, it's probably hard to see on the camera, but my actual glass container is actually freezing. You can see the buildup on the outside. The temperature around it is so much warmer that the actual moisture is freezing to the sticks of it now. So that's what's going on. Same with if you had dry ice on your hands. It would be the same thing. So I think we're finally getting down to where the core temperature that we want. Hopefully closer to about 100 or about negative 110. I try to like to get around negative 140, but it depends on how much dry ice we have in the way. So, here's our rose. You can tell the difference right off the bat. See a little bit of moisture, there's a little bit of it dripping off right now. I'm not even going to get that on my hands. So, typically, your beautiful rose, you'd just be able to pull it off. Nice and nice and nice, very velvety. This rose, on the other hand, you heard the crunches in it. Now, this one could go a little bit longer in it, but it's just falling apart. All that moisture that rose is containing is now freezing. So it's going to be a little bit harder. So I'm going to let this one sit just a little bit longer. And then we're going to come back to that one too, just so we can get as many things in today as we possibly can. Now, we had some red cabbage water sitting over there for a minute now. So, while that's ready, what we're going to do next is we need to strain this. So, we don't want the cabbage water in it. So, I'm going to put this in the sink real quick. Now, I'm going to use a strainer. That's all I'm going to do. I'm going to put it on top. Sorry, got a little bit of silence here. All right. Got a little bit of cabbage still in there. Just going to wash these out, make sure I get all the cabbage out of it. Make it a little bit easier. Okay, so the next thing, we're going to go back into our pH indicator. Now, as I said earlier, the cabbage has a pH indicator about 11.6, and we're going to see if we can manipulate that by adding different materials to it. So I'm going to add a base, an acid, and then I'm going to throw some dry ice one in the middle one, just to see if you can know what's going on and see why it would do that. And if we're going to go off the first two and see if you can figure out what it's going to actually do. So the acid, for my first one, I'm using a lime, which is an acid. It's got some citric acid in it. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to squeeze out some of it. Well, if I can. Five minutes. Okay, so if you notice right off the bat, it turns pink, right? Okay, so now I'm going to add some baking soda, which is a base. And what do you think is going to happen to this one? Is it going to be blue? Or is it going to do anything at all? Is it closer to the actual base level? Now again, I'm not measuring everything out. I'm just going to try to show you, if we were doing the actual acid experiments, I'd show you that. But I kind of want to focus on the dry ice. So I'm just giving you a few different examples. So if you notice, that one turned a blue. So we have a blue for our base on the left side, or for right for you. We have the pink, which is our acid, and then we have the purple in the middle. Okay. So the question is what do you think is going to happen if I put some dry ice in it? Do you think it's going to turn pink? Blue? We got clear from the back, from the principal. Let's see what happens. Now, it's going to be beautiful, beautiful, carbon dioxide coming off of it back in its gas form out of the solid. Okay, so actually, it's going to lighten up a little bit. It's not going to be quite clear because it's not that strong of an acid. It is a carbonic acid, and it's going to be a little bit less purple, so it's got a little bit more of the pH, but it's not quite as the citric acid. It's beautiful, though. Just remember, Mother's Day's coming up. Beautiful science experiments for her. Show her some pretty colors. Okay, so I'm going to set this one to the side now. I know we're going through several things. So for that experiment, all you need is some dry ice, different types of acids and bases, and some red cabbage and some boiling water. Now, it's simple. You can do a whole bunch. When we do our acid and pH experiments in our classroom, we do a wide variety. I just kind of wanted to show you the difference of what you think would happen with the actual dry ice. Now, we're going to come back to this real quick. This thing should be done. We have a gummy worm, and our rose is back.